Hare Krishna. Om Jnanatimirandhasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prashtaya Bhutale Srimate Vedanta Swami Tinamine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatyadekshitar Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhyaivacha Patitanam Pavadebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadiyo Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. My dear Lord, please guide us all so that we can understand the heart of your pure devotees and develop devotion similarly in our heart. Hare Krishna. Thank you for coming today. And I think many devotees are sitting outside. I think we can move aside. I don't need this table. You can come closer. You can manage without the table also. Maybe you can put it over here or something and devotees can come ahead. You can just incline it and put it here or put it somewhere else. You can have something for over here. Some kind of cloth or something over here. Actually, I can move backward also. We are continuing today our discussion of the song Bodo Krupa Koile Krishna. And like we've been discussing one line from the song, we continue that discussion. Would anyone like to, who would like to sing the song? 1, 2 stanzas. Okay. So I'll just come back. No, not the full song. Only one stanza which we are particularly discussing. So the second stanza, the first, can you just sing one line at a time? We'll sing one line 2, 3 times. So the first line we already discussed. Nahe ke no ani bena ei ugrasthane. Could you just sing that maybe 2, 3 times? Thank you. Yeah, if possible. Do we have a mic? Yeah. You can just sing the one line also is enough. We'll just focus on the line which you're discussing. We don't want to go too much in many different directions. So let's continue. We'll decide it a few more times after we discuss it. So let's go over what is happening over here. So Sri Prabhupada is revealing his thoughts in this particular series of prayers. And see, normally, whenever we face any situation, like I discussed, spiritual consciousness is a combination of practical consciousness and transcendental consciousness. So, Prabhupada is seeing Krishna has been very merciful, he has brought me here, and he must have some plan. And how is he arriving at the conclusion? Krishna must have some plan. He's saying, otherwise, why would Krishna get me here? Now, otherwise, why would he bring me to this particular place? So, I'll talk about 2 main things over here. The word Prabhupada uses is Sthani. Now, not many Indians would use the word Ugrasthane for America. We have this song Vrindavan Ramya Sthan. Most Indians would think New York Ramya Sthan. Oh, it's such a wonderful place. So it's like that is like a place of dreams. When I was studying my engineering, I had given my GRE and I had done quite well. I had come first in Maharashtra at that time. So I also had a maternal uncle who had his own company and he did not have a son, so he wanted me to inherit his company. So I was all set to go to America. But then I was introduced to Krishna consciousness and I ended up frustrating my relatives. But about 15 years, about 50, 70 years after I became Brahmachari, I went to America for a speaking tour. And then most of my relatives had become disconnected from me. After I went to America and came back, many of those relatives phoned and called me. Your life has become successful. So now the idea is that for many people in America is like the land of dreams. Srila Prabhupada, on the other hand, is considering it as a Ugrasthan. Ugra means terrible. So now what is terrible for him? He is looking at it in the perspective of Krishna consciousness. And what can seem to be a land of prosperity. There can be material prosperity, but that can also have spiritual poverty. So America is both. It is a land of material prosperity. Prabhupada is seeing it as also, as primarily from his perspective of his mission, he's seeing it as a land of spiritual poverty. And he's thinking, why would Krishna get me here? Now, of course, Prabhupada has himself endeavored to come all the way from India to America. So naturally, he has put in effort. But whenever we achieve anything significant in our lives, it is, whenever we achieve anything significant in our lives, it can't be denied that many factors beyond our control worked in our favor. Yes, we also put in an effort. There's no downplaying that. But say in cricket, if one batsman plays very brilliant innings and wins the match, they can say that batsman played brilliant. But there are so many factors that worked out in favor. Maybe the rains did not fall, and so could actually my match could have been wiped out because of rains. Or maybe the other batsman on the other side did not get out quickly and this batsman stranded not out. Or at that particular time the pitch did not play well, become very unplayable or whatever. There are many factors that are required beyond our control. And they need to work favorably. Now we may attribute this unknown any cause. We may attribute to God or we may not attribute to God. But the point is, many things beyond us need to work in favor for us to be successful. So we could say that there is our endeavor. Now, beyond our endeavor, the world may call it fortune. We may call it God's hands or God's mercy. But both of these, something is human, this is human, and this is transhuman, something beyond human. Nowadays, the word transhuman has a slightly different meaning. But I'm going to use it as, let's avoid that controversy. Let's use the word beyond human. So, so there is a human factor and there's something beyond human that is also important. So Prabhupada is focusing on that. Krishna, you have brought me to this place. Nahe ke no ani bena. If you did not have any purpose, then why would you bring me here? So it's almost like a rhetorical question. So Krishna has brought me here, and if you look at Prabhupada's journey, we could say that he has come from Vrindavan to New York. Now he has come from Vrindavan. Now, if you consider Vrindavan is the capital of devotion. It is the place which Prabhupada famous is land of 5,000 temples. And where everybody knows Krishna, loves Krishna. Now, of course, Vrindavan has become a bit more commercialized, but still, it is so much filled with Krishna devotion. So, in many ways, from the capital of devotion, Prabhupada has come to the capital of illusion. So, in many ways, New York and San Francisco were the key places where the counterculture was there. Now, you could say the West itself is a land of illusion. We'll talk about the counterculture a little bit later. But this was such illusion, like from the traditional Indian perspective, the West would be considered degraded. But the hippies were considered degraded even by Western standards. So the people were considered degraded, those who we consider degraded. So it was like a super illusion, you can say. So Prabhupada has come to this place and he's thinking that why came anyway? If I have come to this place, Krishna must have some plan for bringing me here. So now the idea that quite often when we function in life, there are broadly there is material prosperity and there is material poverty. And similarly, there can be spiritual prosperity and there can be spiritual poverty. So now, if we consider 4 quadrants in this way, now which is the quadrant we would like to be situated in? Quadrant 4, isn't it? And it's not wrong if you consider the prosperity in this world. Who will be able to best use it? Those who are devoted. They will use it well. They won't use it for their own selfish pleasures. They won't certainly use it for self-destructive pleasures. So Krishna wanted Yudhishthira Maharaj to become a king. In fact, in the Bhagavad Gita, the call is, Arjuna, you fight, you win, and you gain a prosperous kingdom. Tasmat muttishta yashon prasva jitva satrud bhusharajyam sabdha. Mayai vaite nihata purvameva nimitta matram bhavasaubhyasani. He's telling Arjuna that just rise and attain victory. You can attain victory. So this is, we could say, the best quadrant in the sense that because of spiritual prosperity, we will be eternally enriched. And material prosperity means we will also have resources that are enough for ourselves and we have resources to attract others, to benefit others. So this is the quadrant we would like to be situated. Now, among the various quadrants, which would be the worst quadrant? Second quadrant, material poverty and spiritual poverty. So, wherever there's spiritual prosperity broadly means that there is attraction towards Krishna, there is love for Krishna. So, we could say these 2 quadrants, wherever there is spiritual prosperity, that is like nectar. Because remembrance of Krishna is like nectar. Now, when there is a spiritual prosperity with material prosperity, it is like sweet nectar. Now, when there is material poverty, it can be like bitter nectar. Now, we may wonder, how can nectar be bitter? The idea seems that nectar always has to be sweet only. But bitter means that sometimes the nectar we can use it either in terms of the taste or nectar we can use it in terms of the effect. Is it idea the nectar? But generally we talk about nectar as, oh, this is like nectar, means it's tasty. But if you consider traditionally with the word soma and somarasa is considered like what it is, it grants immortality. So we can define the word nectar in terms of taste, and we can define the word nectar in terms of the effect. So remembrance of Krishna, attraction to Krishna is always beneficial. In terms of the effect, it is always going to be. So if somebody is spiritually prosperous, their heart is devoted to Krishna, their heart does not shake from remembrance of Krishna, even when they are going through material difficulties, then their future is definitely very bright. But at present, it will be difficult. And it's not no denying when the Pandavas were exiled to the forest, it was a difficult time for them. Especially for Bhima and Duryodhana, Bhima and Draupadi, it was the most difficult time. Draupadi because she felt she had been dishonored, and Bhima because he was so physically powerful and he had done nothing at that time. He felt especially guilty. And I had not done I did nothing to protect Draupadi. Now we could say Yudhishthira was the most guilty. He had gambled. But Yudhishthira came to peace with what had happened. Now his intention had not been bad. It was not that he wanted to gamble to gain some money. He had gambled only because he wanted to follow the elders. His elders had asked him to gamble, invited him for gambling. Dhritarashtra had invited. He had accepted. And then the match had been unfair. He had protested. They had remained silent. So he had kept gambling. It was a terrible mistake. He acknowledged that it was a mistake. But he came to peace with it. And sometimes we all make mistakes in life. And Krishna can work even through our mistakes. But he came to peace with it. However, for him also it was difficult. Because he was also living in a forest. So now, sometimes in life, there can be bitter nectar. That Prabhupada, for example, when he was in India, he was living in Vrindavan for two reasons. Vrindavan was the place of spiritual devotion. He could stay near the samadhis of the Goswamis. From there, he could get spiritual inspiration. But another was that Vrindavan was much cheaper, and Prabhupada didn't have much money. For Prabhupada's service was primarily in Delhi, other places, but mainly at that time in Delhi. That's where he was trying to get his magazine and book published. That's where he was trying to sell his books. But Prabhupada found that staying in Delhi was too expensive. So staying in Vrindavan and traveling back and forth from Vrindavan was much more affordable. So now, many times when Prabhupada was publishing Back to Godhead magazine, he had to choose between whether to use the money that he had to purchase his breakfast or to purchase paper for printing the Back to Godhead magazine. And Prabhupada would use it for printing paper, purchasing printing paper. And the printer was a pious person. Sometimes he would ask Swamiji, have you had any breakfast? And Prabhupada would neither say yes or no. He understood that Prabhupada did not have any breakfast. Then he would arrange something for Prabhupada. So it was a difficult situation. Now Prabhupada was happy that he was happy in the sense that he was carrying on his spiritual master's mission. He was not resentful. He was not frustrated. But still, it was a difficult situation. So material poverty or material difficulty is not something which can be dismissed. Oh, saying it's all temporary. Yes, it's temporary, but while it is there, it is difficult. So ideally, we would like to be in the fourth quadrant. Now, if we consider that if there is spiritual poverty, that means there is no connection with Krishna, there is no attraction to Krishna, there is no awareness of Krishna also, then that is like poison. Now, if there is material prosperity, then it becomes like sweet poison. And if it is material poverty, then it is like bitter poison. Now, I'll re-ask the question from this perspective. I ask you, which is the worst among these four quadrants? So earlier you said second. You still stick to second. Second is terrible and feels terrible. First is actually even more terrible because it doesn't feel terrible. It's like suppose like some people take drugs, and when some people for whatever reason they get a severe reaction when they get drugs. They start getting nightmares, their body doesn't you take the drugs, and they just have such a terrible experience after taking drugs that they give it up immediately. Now, some people take drugs and they go high on taking drugs, and they feel very good after taking drugs. So now, taking drugs itself is bad, but taking drugs and feeling terrible, or taking drugs and feeling wonderful, which is worse? Yes, taking drugs and feeling wonderful is actually dreadful, because that creates an illusion by which the person will go on taking drugs. So, in that sense, now having material prosperity itself is not a bad thing. But if that material prosperity takes us away from Krishna, keeps us away from Krishna, or it makes us think that there's no need for Krishna, then that can increase our spiritual power. And that is where it can become a problem. So now from this perspective, if we can consider, when Prabhupada is talking about America being Ugrasthane, so America falls in which quadrant? First quadrant, yes. So Prabhupada is calling it Ugrasthana. So as I said, most of us would not consider it to be Ugrasthan because we look at the material prosperity. But Prabhupada is looking at the spiritual poverty. And that's how he's calling it as Ugrasthan. Now within these 4 quadrants, say at that time, and to some extent now also, in which quadrant would India fall? Yeah. You could say a small fraction of India are in the 4th quadrant. Most of India is in the 3rd quadrant. So India is not really having that much material comfort or material prosperity. Of course, India is growing economically, geopolitically. So we could say part of it is in the 1st quadrant now. And maybe it will come in the 1st quadrant too. But we don't know whether it will come to the 1st quadrant or we'll go to the, we'll come to the 1st quadrant, we'll come to the 4th quadrant, or we'll go to the 1st quadrant. Isn't it? We are moving somewhat towards prosperity, but it depends on where we go. So the ideal situation is to be, the best situation is to be in the 4th quadrant. But if you see Prabhupada's own life, Prabhupada tried very hard to start his own business. And when Prabhupada was just starting off, he's finished his education, he's starting off on his career, an astrologer had told him that you may become one of the wealthiest persons in India. And Prabhupada took that prophecy and he said that if I can earn a lot of wealth, then I can give a lot of contribution to my spiritual master Krishna. And thus he worked very hard. So I've been practicing this. Let us see. I never get it right. What is this supposed to be? Okay, it's supposed to be a map of India. So, here is Kolkata. Here is Mumbai. And here somewhere is Prayag. What is common among these 2 places? Any thoughts? When Prabhupada had as a grasta, had his business at these 3 places. So Prabhupada was born and brought up in Kolkata. That's where he initially started his pharmacy. Then he moved to Mumbai and then eventually had Prayag pharmacy. Now I have a friend who has done his PhD in history and especially is focused on pre-independence Indian history. So he was telling me that in those times, people would not travel so much. Of course, if somebody had a government job, and the government job transferred them, then they would travel. Then at that time, there would be quarters provided, there would all be a ready occupation. So it was not that difficult to travel. But business people relocating their business from one part of the country to entirely another part of the country. In those times, there were practically no planes. Prabhupada took his first plane ride when he was in America in 1966, late 1967 almost, when he went from New York to San Francisco. So that means he had to travel all uh, by train. And sometimes he could not take his family immediately. His family was in one place, his family was in another place. So actually, Prabhupada did much of his reading of Shastra during his travels. Prabhupada had a busy life, he had business, he had a family. So we see that Prabhupada quotes so much Shastra. Where did he learn it? He used his travel time very wisely. The point I'm making over here is Prabhupada worked very hard to try to start a business. And just when the business would seem to be successful, somehow everything would fall apart. No, at one time a fire broke out, another time some thief stole something from all the stories, another time one of his own assistants betrayed him. So things just didn't work out. And Prabhupada kept trying repeatedly and nothing was working. So then finally when Prabhupada was once reading Shastra, at that time he came across this verse in the Srimad Bhagavatam. Yasyaham anugrahanami harishmi tadhanamishanai. Tato dhanam tijatyasya swajana dukkha dukkha. He says, there Krishna says that upon those whom I bestow my special mercy, I take everything away. And when I take everything away from them, then they have no one left except me to take shelter of. Krishna is answering Yudhishthira's question. Yudhishthira is asking that, "No, we were so devoted to you, Krishna. Why did we have to lose everything?" So Krishna says, that is my special mercy. So whenever devotees hear this, they may say, maybe I don't want this special mercy. Ordinary mercy will be okay for me. So now, if we consider among the four quadrants, where would special mercy fall? Which quadrant? Third quadrant, yes. Now, of course, if we are irresponsible and lose our job, and then we say Krishna has restored special mercy on me. No, that is not special mercy, that's special stupidity. So, we should not think that getting ourselves into the third quadrant will automatically help, like getting into material poverty will automatically lead to spiritual growth. No, in material poverty, we may not go to quadrant 3, we may go to quadrant 2. It's possible. So, as devotees, it is not that we deliberately try for material growth. Like you may hear, as one devotee, I knew him about, he was introduced to Bhakti about the same time when I was introduced. And I met him recently in America. And he said, now, I strayed away from Bhakti. I want to become a bit more serious about my Bhakti. And he said, I've been connected. He had read a story of some devotee, many stories like that. One devotee, he got cancer. He became very serious, and his last departure was very glorious, surrounded by devotees and absorbed in Krishna consciousness. So he was telling me that, no, I am not serious about my bhakti. I want to become serious, but I'm not becoming serious. So I'm thinking, maybe I should pray to Krishna to give me something like cancer. Then I'll become serious about it. I told him, no. If cancer were the producer of bhakti, then all devotees can become oncologists. Then we can just say all patients cancer patients become devotees. Yeah, there are material difficulty can sometimes take us toward Krishna and sometimes can take us away from Krishna. It depends. Somebody may be trying to practice bhakti and they get a terrible disease. They may ask, why did this happen to me? And they may go away from Krishna. So now in Bhagavatam, see, why are we talking about this theme? That see, we have two main texts. We have the Bhagavatam and the Gita. Of course, Chaitanya Charan is there. Right now, let's focus on these. Now, both talk about various spiritual paths. Both focus on bhakti. At the same time, while both focus on bhakti, the way they focus on bhakti is very different. the bhakti that is given in the Gita, put it this way, both are focusing on bhakti. The Gita bhakti is much more world affirming, world transforming. Arjuna wants to renounce the world, and Krishna tells him, you stay in the world, you fight against the adharma in the world, and you establish dharma. But do it in a devotion. So it is a much more world transforming bhakti. But the Bhagavatam's bhakti is much more world transcending bhakti. Whom is the Bhagavatam spoken to? Parikshit Maharaj. Now Parikshit Maharaj has been cursed to die in 7 days, and he has accepted that curse. So because he has accepted that curse, see, once somebody has made a decision, then as the decision is a reasonable decision, then those who are supporting that person should tell the person things that will help support the decision. Now suppose some young devotee gets cancer, and the devotee says, yeah, I won't take any treatment. I'll just go to Vrindavan, I'll just stay in devotees, I'll hear constant kirtan, and I'll live well. You say, if the devotee is 20, 25, 30, see, you are young right now. This can be cured. You fight against it, you cure it. You can do so much service throughout your life. Now you can get purified. And now, on the other hand, if somebody is 75, 80, 85, their body is already weak and emaciated. If they get cancer, and if they decide, okay, I tried treatment, they're not working, I just want to go to Vrindavan and I want to live my life. And if somebody has already decided that they're going to go to Vrindavan, then we should not be telling the stories about somebody who at the age of 80 decided, I'll build a temple for Krishna. And they work hard and build a temple. Isn't it? If somebody has made a decision like that, now that kind of story, we can tell somebody who's at 25, we want to encourage them to fight and recover. So the Bhagavatam is spoken to Parikshit Maharaj. And therefore, Shukdev Goswami often tells stories that focus on transcending. They also talk about sometimes attaining wonderful things of the world. Like in the Bhagavatam, Dhruva Maharaj story is there, where Dhruva by his bhakti gains a kingdom bigger than his father's kingdom. But then the focus of the Dhruva story is ultimately he ascends on the Vaikuntha airplane and goes to Vaikuntha. That is the ultimate victory. And he even takes his mother with him. So bhakti can be both world transforming and world transcending. So if we consider, if we go back to this quadrant, broadly, the Bhagavatam is focusing on this quadrant. The Gita is focusing on this quadrant. Now, that means, what is the quadrant over here? The Bhagavatam is expecting that, is recognizing the situation that sometimes even for devotees, it's not so much material poverty or just material adversity. Materially bad things may happen for a devotee. And then how to stay graceful like Parikshit Maharaj. How to stay absorbed in remembrance of Krishna. So now, of course, a devotee can also have a situation like Arjuna, where a devotee can fight and attain victory. So just in the case of Parikshit Maharaj, it was the last days of his life. And he was going to focus on accepting the end of his life. Now, as devotees, for our service to Krishna, we can seek material resource. There's nothing wrong in seeking material resource. But the important point is that means as devotees, we can try to be informed. But the important thing is, in trying to be informed, we should not make so much endeavor that we end up going to one. That we give up Krishna in the pursuit of material prosperity. So if we consider now when Srila Prabhupada is offering this prayer, he is in which quadrant at this point? Yes, he has materially nothing. He is in quadrant. He is spiritually rich. He is spiritually enriched. And that is why he is feeling no temptation by going to America. Oh, there's so much enjoyment over here. There is so much luxury over here. He's not even in the least attracted by that. He's attracted by the fact that he's come there for the purpose of sharing Krishna's message. So, in one sense, we could say this is a very incompatible situation. So, Srila Prabhupada is himself in quadrant 3, America is in quadrant 1. So, it's like a completely different situation. Prabhupada is spiritually enriched, but he's materially impoverished. America is materially prosperous, but it's spiritually impoverished. So now, Srila Prabhupada, by his effort, what he will be doing is that he will come by Krishna's mercy to quadrant 4 of his life, at last 8-10 years of his life. And he will also bring places within America, not all of America, but many places in America where spiritual temples and spiritual communities are established. He'll bring those also to quadrant 4. So, as devotees, we look at, and what is Prabhupada saying over here? Nahi keno ani be nahi grasthani. So, it's a very incompatible situation that we go back over here. Srila Prabhupada is himself in quadrant 3, that is his spiritual prosperity, spiritually positive, materially negative. And he is in America. And America is in quadrant 1, that is spiritually negative, materially positive. So he is saying, why would Krishna get me into this situation? So if we are brought into a situation where we just don't belong, either Krishna wants us to leave that situation, go somewhere else, or Krishna has some purpose for getting us into that situation. So that is what is Prabhupada's confidence. That Krishna, you have brought me here for some purpose. If you had no purpose, you would not bring me here. And now we can apply this to our own life. That we'll talk in the next verse. At whatever situation we are in, that we are here for some purpose. Maybe in a particular job, particular family situation, particular health situation, particular financial situation. And we feel this is a very difficult situation to be. So yes, we can also say, Gopal said, आज के कितु कार्य तबे एहि अनुमाने. Krishna, I guess you must have purpose. Nahe keno ani ben ei ugrasthane. Otherwise, why would you bring me here? So let us recite this verse once more. Ache kichu karya tab ei anumane. Once more. Let's just quickly tell the meaning of the next verse and we'll go to it. Rajas tam gune era sabai acharana. And all of these people over here, they are all covered by the modes of passion and ignorance. Rajas tam guna era sabai acharana. And what is the problem for him? Prabhupada is not simply seeing that, oh, they are all materialistic and they are all sinful. He's seeing the covering of mode of passion and ignorance as making them spiritually receptive. Vasudeva katha ruchi nahi se prasanna. So because of that, they have neither the taste for Vasudeva katha, nor do they experience any joy in Vasudeva katha. They're two slightly different things. When we have taste for some food, we look forward to eating that food. But sometimes we may never heard of some food, and we go to some guest and they have their own cuisine and they prepare some food. And we eat it, hey, this is tasty. I never knew about this food. So we may not have ruchi, but still we become prasanna. So, but what happens is, if somebody is very materially obsessed, then they will neither have taste for Krishna, nor will they find joy in Krishna. And that is the spiritual predicament that Prabhupada will be addressing. So, you can sing this. Thank you. So here, let's move on to one more point now. That now people there are spiritually not receptive, and Prabhupada is spiritually very eager to share Krishna. So he is analyzing the cause. Why are people not receptive? Now it's interesting. Prabhupada, the cause, or we could say here, let's put it first, the problem or the obstacle in his preaching. The problem, Prabhupada could have seen it with material vision. And he could have come up with many reasons. He could have said that these people, they are unfamiliar with Krishna Bhakti. This is like not just a foreign culture, like an alien culture for them. A foreign means it's a different country. Alien means it's a different planet only. So there was for those people, it was like very difficult. There was a disciple who used to teach English in Ohio State University, and he was also trying to teach through that. So he was an English teacher. So one day his principal called him. He says, "I heard you're talking about God in your college, in your classes." He said, "Sir, I didn't know there was a rule against talking about God." He said, "No, but the problem is you're talking about a strange conception of God." He said, "What is your conception?" I said, "I have no conception." He said, "If you have no conception, then how can you say my conception is strange?" He said that, you're talking about a black God. Then this was the time of the civil conflict in America. There are whites and blacks. You're talking about a black God? I said, "No. I'm talking about a blue God." And he said, "You're talking about a God who is a cowboy?" For them, like Dallas Cowboys are there. So he said, "No, it's a cowherd boy." So for them, it was just completely inconceivable, the idea of Krishna as God. So they could say that Prabhupada could have, for them, this is so alien. Prabhupada could also have seen that maybe my accent is so thick. For many people in the early days, Westerners, to understand Prabhupada's English was very difficult. And Prabhupada was not unaware of the problem. So Prabhupada could have said, "Okay, my accent is very thick." Now Prabhupada could also have thought that, maybe I am inexperienced in outreach outside India. Prabhupada before this had never traveled outside India. And he's now coming to America. He did not really get much guidance from his godbrothers about how to preach because they had also not been very successful. So he didn't talk with them. And so he could say, "I don't have any experience." Or Prabhupada could have seen that we have already discussed. He did not have any financial support. He had no material resources. He did not have followers. He did not have money. He did not have institutional backing. So Prabhupada could have seen all these as problems. But Prabhupada He's saying from much more of a philosophical or spiritual vision. And he's seeing the problem is the lower modes. So Prabhupada is not unaware of this, but Prabhupada is focused on this problem. So how we see the problem also shows the level of our consciousness. Sometimes we may say that this person is such a rude person. Okay, that person is a rude person. That's one way of looking at it. Another thing is, this person has a lot of condition. Now, it is the same point, but slightly differently. It's a more philosophical way. Rude means how that person is with me. Conditionings means that person has a bit of a philosophy. We have a little more philosophical vision. So how we see also is going to determine how we deal with the problem. So Prabhupada is seeing it from a philosophical perspective. And it's important that when we are facing challenges, it's not that we neglect the practical perspective, but we also need to be able to see from a philosophical perspective. And a philosophical perspective is, say, when we face some problems in life, we could say, okay, this person is making my life miserable, or my body is so sickly because of which I have a problem. And that would be true. We can also say, okay, that this world is dukhalaya, and some problem or other will keep going. But that does not necessarily mean that we have to just accept the problem and live with it. We can try to deal with it. But we can get some perspective, some problem or the other will always be there in life. So here I would like to focus on one key principle. When we talk about a situation, any kind of situation in our life. So our situation, there is the cause of the situation, and there is the purpose of the situation. Now, cause and purpose are not the same thing. Cause is from where that situation has come. And purpose is where that situation can take us. Now, what do I mean by this? That sometimes, like earlier I said that whatever problem we are facing, because Krishna must have some purpose. That's what I said. Ahike no ani bena eyugrastani. Why would Krishna get me into this situation? But sometimes you say, has Krishna got me into a situation? Or it's my own mistakes, my own bad judgment that has got me into this situation? Or has Krishna got me into a situation? Or this person misled me. This person manipulated me. That's how he got me into it. Now it's possible. So the point is that Krishna is so expert. Krishna is so expert that whatever be the cause of a situation, he can use it for a spiritual purpose. That is the expertise of Krishna. Whatever be the way we get into a particular situation, Krishna can use it for a spiritual purpose. And so to understand this, Krishna's purpose is not necessarily like a straight line. It's more like a broad direction. So to understand Krishna's purpose, let's consider a metaphor. So we have a mountain and we have an ocean. Have I discussed this metaphor in the earlier classes till now? Okay. So basically, a river moves from the mountain to the ocean. Now, one river may move by one path, another river may move by another path. Now, another river may move in a much more twisted path and may get down to the ocean. Another river may go from completely different way. So now each river will move by its own path toward the ocean. So the river, we can say, has an ultimate one destination. But each river has its own path to get to the destination. So like that, we can say that we all have an ultimate purpose, that is to become purified, develop love for Krishna, and to go to Krishna. But each one of us has to go through our own life journey to get to it. So each one of us is like a river. So there is one purpose for all of us. Or you can say there's a universal purpose. But there are many paths. Here I'm not using path in terms of Bhakti Yoga and Jnana Yoga. I'm talking more about the journey of our life. Many, or we could say there are individual paths. So each one of us may choose our path towards Krishna. So for example, brahmacharis and grahasthas or vanaprasthas, sannyasis, they have their own ashram, they choose their own path. But each grahastha has their own challenges. Each grahastha has their own situation. Each brahmachari has their own situation. So everyone has to find their path to Krishna. So now, whichever be the path we are going along, if the river is going towards the ocean, the pull of gravity, the pull toward the ocean is always going to be there. The pull toward the ocean, that's like the purpose. But some river might go through a path where there is like a huge rocky hill coming in the way. Then the river has to maybe climb up the hill and go, or go around the hill, or it has to keep pushing till it manages to break through the hill or erode the hill and create a path. So each one of us has to find our own path, like a river. So why is this important to understand? Let's go back to that point of cause and purpose. I'll give a few distinct examples of how we may get into a bad situation because of various factors. And still, Krishna can use the situation for his plan. So let's start with first, a mistake. Now, we know that well-known story of Draupadi when she had the Akshay Patra. And then Drupada was manipulated by Duryodhan. So not Drupada, Durvasa Muni. Durvasa Muni was manipulated so that he would go post lunch. And then at that time, what happened? When all the Pandavas were panicking, so many guests have come, how will I feed them? And Draupadi actually prayed to Krishna. And Krishna came there, and the first thing Krishna said is, I'm very hungry, can you give me some food? Now Draupadi was thinking, first I could not feed the sages, now I can't feed my daughters. It's sometimes we pray to Krishna to solve a problem, the problem seems to become worse. Now, Draupadi said, I don't have anything, that's why I called you. Go and see, something must be there. Now, when she went there, she saw that there's a little bit of a shark on the plate. A little bit of morsel of vegetable was there. And Krishna took that vegetable. And now we often focus on the stories part. When he ate it, all the sages were satisfied. Yasmin tushta, jagat tushta. Now that's a wonderful part of the story. But let's track a little bit. How did that morsel remain on that plate? You see, if we have some special utensils in our home, maybe we have some silverware or some golden plates or something like that, which we use only on special occasions. It's very important for us. Then we'll wash it and keep it very careful. So the fact that this morsel remained on this plate, that was a mistake. When Draupadi was exiled, so she had a couple of maid servants who were very faithful. They told that even if you can't pay us, we are going to come with you. So maybe it was those maid servants, they didn't wash it properly. But after all, it's her home. It's a forest hermitage, but it's her place. So it's her responsibility. So it was a mistake. But Krishna used that mistake to further his plan. So if we consider a mistake, the example is morsel is a small particle of food on Akshay Patra. the theme what I'm discussing over here is that whatever be the cause of a situation, Krishna can use that situation for his purpose. So from that situation, Krishna's purpose can be used. So from a mistake, whoever's mistake it was, Krishna utilized it for his purpose. Now, if we look at a misunderstanding, that let's consider Sugriva's situation. Sugriva and Vali were brothers. They were more than brothers. They were close friends. They were close allies. And they had fought many wars together. But then there was a terrible misunderstanding because of which Vali thought that Sugriv has tried to trap him and take the throne away from him. And then Vali started attacking Sugriv. And then he became convinced that Sugriva has tried to kill me and he will try to kill me again. Therefore, I will kill him first. And because of that, Sugriva had to flee, not only from his kingdom, he had to flee all over the world. And he traveled everywhere, and wherever he would go, he was always in fear. And somehow either Vali would come or Vali's assassins would come and he would have to flee from there. And then finally, he found a safe place. Which was that? Vishamukh Parvat. Now that was right next to Vali's kingdom. Now, Sugriva could have said, why did I find this place before? I had to run and survive and live in fear for so long, and this place was right here. And Vali was also frustrated. Sugriva is right here, but I can't do anything to him. So, for those of you who know a little bit about geopolitics, the way Vali felt about Sugriva being in Vishamukh Parvat, that's how China feels about Taiwan. Right next, but you can't do much about it. Isn't it? So anyway, now Sugriva could have got frustrated. But later on, when the search for Sita had to be organized, at that time, Sugriva guided all his Vanaras. You go in this direction, you come to this mountain, go this way. Don't go that way. It'll take a long time for you. Here there is a tunnel, you use this tunnel. You don't go into that forest, that will trap you. He gave elaborate directions of how they should go in various paths to search for Sita. And then Ram was listening to all this. And then Ram came to Sugriva. After Sugriva had finished his address, he says, "Was geography your favorite subject in school?" He probably didn't ask that. But one day he said, "How do you know so much?" And that's when Sugriva realized that all his traveling and running and hiding and fleeing, all that had come to use now for Lord Ram's service. So, now misunderstanding was Sugriva's running across the world. That was used in the Lord's plan. So, whatever be the reason why we might get into a particular situation, it doesn't matter. Krishna can use that to further his plan. Now, of course, neither of these means that, we should make a mistake. And you say, my mistake is Krishna's plan. No, we should not. We should try to do as well as we can. Now, beyond this, somebody is not just a mistake, it's not just misunderstanding, it is downright malice. Malice means bad feeling, ill will. That somebody wants to hurt somebody. Now, even through somebody's malice, that means a person wants to hurt someone else, but through that also, Krishna can execute his plan. So here if we consider, what happened was Duryodhan poisoned Bhima. Now, when Duryodhan poisoned Bhima, what happened by that? Initially, it was that Bhima disappeared and People thought Bhima may have done that. Duryodhana at least thought like that. But Bhima went to the abode of Varuna. There he survived, and there he was given celestial nectar, and he came back much stronger. And Bhima initially wanted to really teach Duryodhana a lesson. He wanted to beat him. And Yudhishthira said, "Don't do that. You know, maybe he's just insecure, and we are new over here. We don't know whether if we accuse him, who will take our side, who will not take our side. We don't want to break our family, right?" Bhima didn't agree with that, but he accepted. So we disagree, but he did not disobey. But still, he wanted to have some torment Duryodhana to at least some extent. So he deliberately went to Duryodhana. He said, "Duryodhana, last time you had given me that special feast. I like the taste very much. Can you make it again?" And now, because he had drunk that celestial nectar, he was immune to that poison. So Duryodhana thought, same opportunity I thought is gone, it's come again. He made that. Bhima happily ate it and he was just grinning. And Duryodhana didn't know what happened. So the point is, Duryodhana might have done something out of malice, but Krishna used it for his purpose. Now, somebody might do something out of anger also. So, if we consider Urvashi cursing Arjuna. Now we know this incident happened in Swarga, where Arjuna had gone and he noticed when Indra was introducing Shusha, pointing out to various people in his courtyard, it is Urvashi. And Arjuna was intrigued and he was glancing at her repeatedly. So Urvashi thought that he's interested. She was also attracted to Arjuna. So at night she came in very revealing clothes and in a very provocative with words, and she came to Arjuna. And Arjuna said, "No, says that you were the wife of my ancestor Pururava. So I had heard about you in stories long ago. That's why I was interested in looking at you." He said, "You are like a mother for me." Now, this is like if somebody comes with desire and you tell them you are like a mother, that's like the worst mood killer. So for Urvashi, now, she was extraordinarily attractive and men would beg to have a chance with her. And now she was offering herself and Arjuna refused. And she said that, "Oh, I'm not a mother. I know those rules don't apply in heaven." So Arjuna said, "Yeah, but I don't belong to heaven. I'm only a guest over here." So she said, "What kind of man are you that you are refusing a woman who isn't having a desire for you?" She says, "If you don't accept me, I'll curse you." And she cursed him to lose his manhood. Now, this is like for a Kshatriya, for any man, but for a Kshatriya, this is like a worst nightmare. And he could say, "Surely I did something glorious. I resisted a temptation. And after resisting a temptation, you get a curse for that. You would expect a reward and you get a curse." But that helped Arjuna to hide himself. When did that work out for him? When he became Brihmanalla in the Ajnatavas. So, like earlier I mentioned this point that what happened to us happened for us. So, whatever be the cause that something happens, Krishna can use it for his purpose. So now when Prabhupada came to America, whatever the specific circumstances by which Prabhupada has come to America, those circumstances Krishna will use in his service. So what were the specific circumstances by which Prabhupada came? I'll explain that and then we'll conclude this class. Before that, how many of you have any questions at this point? Okay, one question. I don't want you to ask the question right now. I just want to know how much more I should go before we have questions. Two questions. Okay, fine. Go. Gifts. Okay. Okay, 15-20 minutes. Or minutes, okay, then I'll continue tomorrow. So we'll talk about the cause that by which Prabhupada, when he came to America, he came in a place that was like counterculture. So what was the counterculture and how Prabhupada landed over there at that particular time? We'll look at the specific causes. But the principle I'm saying is that yes, we may be in a particular situation, whatever be the reason, somebody misled us, there was misunderstanding, we made mistakes, whatever happens, Krishna can use it all in his service. So that's why we should never be so much caught in guilt or resentment, hopelessness that my situation is so terrible because I made this mistake or because this happened, because this person treated me like this. Therefore, now I will never be able to do anything worthwhile in my life. I can never do anything for Krishna. Because of this, I am spiritually ruined. That never happens. So whatever be the cause of the situation, Krishna can use that situation for his purpose. Now, how exactly? That we don't know. When Arjuna, he was learning archery, he did not know necessarily that in future there's going to be Dharma Yuddha, and that's why I should learn archery now so that in future I can use my archery skills in the service. He did not know that. But whatever the situation, we try to make the best of the situation. We try to approach that situation positively. So when Prabhupada is saying this is Ugrasthane, that this is a terrible place, that is not leading him to pessimism. That, oh, it's such a terrible place. How will these people ever hear about Krishna? They'll never hear about Krishna. So what is the point of coming here? No, Krishna has brought me here. There is some purpose. So I'll summarize what we discussed today. Two main points. The first point we discussed was the contrast between Srila Prabhupada's situation and America's situation versus America. So we focused on this 4 quadrants, that there can be material prosperity or material poverty. And similarly, there can be material spiritual prosperity or spiritual poverty. So we discussed how among these 4 quadrants, so America is over here. So these 2 quadrants, basically, the quadrants of spiritual prosperity, spiritual poverty are like poison. But within this, there can be sweet poison and there can be bitter poison. So in one sense, bitter poison feels terrible, but sweet poison is actually much more dangerous. On the other hand, if there is spiritual prosperity, that means we are connected with Krishna, we are attracted to Krishna, then whatever happens, that is like nectar. So it can be sweet nectar in the sense that materially things are good for us, or it can be bitter nectar. Bitter means not the nectar itself is bad, but the current experience will be difficult. So Srila Prabhupada himself is right now in this situation. But Srila Prabhupada, what is he going to do is eventually he will come to this situation and he will bring at least pockets of America also into situation, material prosperity. So we discussed how the Gita's message focuses on this 4th quadrant. The Bhagavatam's message focuses on the 3rd quadrant. So a devotee can practice bhakti in both quadrants. And then we discussed the positivity that we can always have. A devotee is always positive in all situations. So if we happen to be if the cause of a situation, cause of a negative situation, a difficult situation that we are in, whatever be the cause, that can be included or used for Krishna's purpose. So we focus on not so much the point that this is come from here. So we discussed many examples. Mistake was the Draupadi example. What are the other examples we discussed? Misunderstanding. That was Sugriva. Misunderstanding. And so because of somebody's whatever happens, there will be this understanding was Sugriv. Then we have malice, that was Duryodhan and Bhima. So Bhima's situation because of Duryodhan's malice. And then we also have anger. So now, it was not that Urvashi had hate for Arjuna. She was just angry with him. But still, whatever be the reason, it can be used in Krishna's purpose. That's why as devotees, we never become hopeless. So the lesson is just try to make the best of whatever situation we are in. So we try to have an attitude of service. Krishna, I don't know why I'm in this situation or why you have brought me in this situation. But whatever, you must have some plan. So let me keep doing my best. And what Krishna's plan is will be eventually revealed. Thank you very much. Hare Rama. Is there any question? Yes, what? Do you have mine? Oh, you got the answer. Okay. Yeah. So, like, I would say that it's not just put up with the situation. Sometimes we may have to fight to change the situation also. But the point is, don't think that the situation has ruined my life. So if you see that Sugriva did not just accept, oh, there's a misunderstanding, I have to die, let Bali kill me. He kept running away. So it's not that so sometimes when we say live with the situation, live with the situation doesn't necessarily mean we accept the situation. Or rather, we don't do anything about the situation. Sometimes there's nothing we can do about the situation. Sometimes we can do something about the situation. But the point is that don't waste too much emotional energy in resenting the situation we are in. How to respond, there are different ways, and that will depend on the Ishkal. We will discuss that in one of the later prayers. There are only 3 ways we can respond. We'll discuss that later. But while we are there, let's not resent it. Let's try to make the best of it. Okay. Yes.
How you can understand sometimes in the leader society, I mean, our society only, but they will keep everyone in touch of like we have this kind of this in some way they push the people and thinking and saying that this is a inspired by Krishna and this is the we have served we have how we can understand of the leader or any person where his situation really given by Krishna he like is only on his mind is doing. Or even when it comes other people, leader, anyone, whatever they want to from the people, they will quote some kind of sloka or something.
Correct.
And try to, manipulate to people or something, they can do it. How we can understand it in the situation? Okay. It's given by Krishna or the person.
I'm wondering whether this question is coming from Krishna or coming from you. Okay. When I started traveling abroad, so I asked my spiritual master Radha for some advice. So he told me that watch out for planted questions. What are planted questions? Like somebody deliberately asks a provocative question that you give some answer which will get you into trouble afterwards. Nowadays, in the age of social media, you can just take one clip out and oh, this person said like this person said like that. So, of course, I'm not saying your question is like that, but sometimes these questions can be difficult. So, I'll require about 1 hour to answer them. Not so much, but see, when we are following instructions, say we have our spiritual master, we have a spiritual guide, we have some senior devotee. So generally, the vision is that Here there is authority, and here is the subordinate. That means the authority is on top, and we just have to obey the authority. And yes, there is that vision. But if we look at scripture itself, that is not the only vision. We have authority and subordinate. It's not necessarily that vertical relation. So, for example, if we consider here Narada and Dhruva. So, what happened is that Narada told Dhruva that you are just a small child. So, children have some quarrels, children quibble over some things. Don't feel it, go back home. And if you think you're not a child, you think you are a saintly person. Saintly person is honored, is honored. Just go back home. So now, what did Dhruva say? Your words are true, but because my heart is so wounded, they find so much place in my heart. So please give me some instructions that work for me. So basically, here what is there? There is negotiation. It is not just acceptance. Whatever you are told, I accept it. There can be negotiation. Now, if you look at Srila Prabhupada's own life, we can say Srila Prabhupada made his spiritual master's instruction as his life and soul. But he did not. And his spiritual master also understood. He would say that he will do everything in his own time. So, he as a grahastha, he did his grahastha responsibility. Afterwards, he was. So, that's why we shouldn't think that following the spiritual master has to be unquestioning. Now, there can be some questioning, there can be some negotiation. Ultimately, it is we who have to implement that. And unless we are convinced about it, unless our head and heart is in that, we won't be able to do it. So, generally speaking, it is best that. So this is the one principle that it is not wrong to discuss, to negotiate, to like to ask some questions. That this is something I cannot. Please give me some other instruction, some other service. Please do it for me right. No, you have to do it right now, like soon. No, Narad Muni does not say that to Dhruva. Now somebody may say Dhruva is not a surrendered devotee. Okay, maybe. But still he also attained perfection. So he may not have been surrendered, still he was determined. What instruction he got, he was determined in pursuing that. Yeah, somebody may say, I'm not that surrendered, that's okay. We all are at different levels in our spiritual life. So sometimes trying to not being disrespectful, not being offensive, but being candid. That this doesn't work in my situation, this doesn't work with my head and heart. That's okay. So Srila Prabhupada, for example, the same question, he may answer in 2-3 different ways in different ways. Now, there are some answers that Prabhupada has given, I can never give those answers. It just doesn't work for me. That is not my nature, that is not the way my brain works. I expect Prabhupada to give that answer. But I will answer that question in a different way, which works for my heart. So it is Prabhupada himself has used different approaches. So the principle is that we need to be ready. We need to understand that the negotiating and discussing point is not against the principles. That is, so I'll talk about 3 main things. One is if this is the authority. Let's go back here. Authority and subordinate. So what I talked about is the relationship itself. That's the first thing I talked. Now, second is the heart of the authority. Now, this is very difficult to determine. Is it every single word that the spiritual master speaks? Is it Krishna speaking to the spiritual master? How do we know that? It may be, it may not be. Prabhupada would speak something and sometimes in a very light-hearted way. It was humorous. But was it that it was Krishna speaking? Of course, Prabhupada is speaking. Krishna is speaking to Prabhupada. Okay. Prabhupada said, my books are written by Krishna. Okay. Yes, true. But if his books are written by Krishna, why did Prabhupada put himself as the author of books? Why did Prabhupada put Krishna as the author of his books? Isn't it? Now we can say, yes, Krishna spoke those thoughts to Prabhupada. But are we saying that Prabhupada's books are not Prabhupada's books, they're only Krishna's one, and Prabhupada is not there in his books at all? No, it's a mystical combination of Krishna is giving the idea, Krishna is giving the thought, and Prabhupada is using his vocabulary, his examples, and then he's presenting it. So when the divine works through the human, how exactly it works, it's quite mysterious. So now like we said, let's look at this. Divine works through the human. Now we may say that the spiritual master is not a human being. Well, the spiritual master is certainly a human being. It is said that consider the spiritual master to be just a human being. That is the problem. That Narakhi Buddhi is what? To think that the spiritual master is just a human being. The spiritual master, just like to say the deity is just stone. But is the deity not stone? The deity is made of stone. At the same time, because Krishna has been invited in Krishna, it's much, much more than stone. So now when the divine works through a human, there are two extremes. One is that it is never possible. That whatever human being is speaking, it is coming only for that human being's speculative mind. And nothing is coming. And the other is to say it is always happening. That every single word that is spoken by a human being who is representing Krishna is Krishna's word. Now both of these are extremes. So what we see is that now we can't know which words are actually coming from Krishna, which words are coming from that person. Now, even if they're coming from that person's inspiration, that doesn't mean they can't be used in Krishna's service. As I said, Krishna can use any cause in his purpose. Sometimes we get an idea. Is that idea coming from the Paramatma, or is that idea coming from our creativity? Now you can say our creativity also comes from Krishna. Well, maybe not. I don't know. So it's difficult to say. But the point is, rather than focusing on whether it is coming from Krishna, we focus on whether it is anukul for our bhakti or it is pratikul for our bhakti. And to make this analysis, we need to be cool. So we need to be cool-headed. So if we are too hot-headed, okay, this is a spiritual master instruction, I have to do this. No, this is not spiritual master instruction, I reject it. No, cool. We have to look at it. And sometimes we may be able to find, sometimes we not. So respectfully, we can say this is not possible for me, right? And now sometimes it may happen that the spiritual authority, the spiritual guide, the spiritual master, whoever it is, may have very strong desire for something to happen. And we may also feel inspired by that. And we may want to do it. And we may try to do it. Somebody else may not feel inspired. And that's okay. Sometimes somebody may feel very inspired, but they may not be equipped to do that. They may not have the talent, they may not have the expertise. So sometimes they may try, but it will not work. So the idea is that in general, we should try to obey our spiritual master. At the same time, okay, so this last point, I will elaborate more in a future class, but I'll just mention it right now. See, the spiritual master is our spiritual master. The spiritual master is not our material master. Now, what do I mean by material master and spiritual master? The spiritual master may give us guidance about specific aspects of material life. okay, don't take this job, take this job. Now, that is something which we should not consider as a mandatory instruction. The spiritual master is an expert in spiritual subjects. That does not necessarily mean the spiritual master is expert in material subjects. So, for example, if a devotee has cancer, now the spiritual master says, don't take any allopathic treatment, just take Ayurveda. Now, should we consider that as like a spirit, as a binding instruction? Maybe. Prabhupada, did he mandate, Prabhupada personally preferred Ayurveda, but did Prabhupada mandate that everybody has to take Ayurveda only? No, Prabhupada didn't. And there are a couple of times when Prabhupada also, when he was in London, he had some issues, so he did allopathic procedure also he did. So generally, it is also the spiritual master's responsibility to not give certain things as instructions. And these can be suggestions. So if you are financially well situated, then I'm doing this project. Maybe if after you retire or if you can settle yourself, you can come and serve in this. That will be wonderful. I'll be happy with it. So it's one thing to say that I'll be happy if you do this. It's quite another thing that you should do. They're two very different things. So the way our movement is progressing now, we also have this ISKCON Disciple Score, and depending on how teachers it's taught differently to some extent. But one idea is that if the spiritual master gives some career advice, if the spiritual master gives some relational advice, the spiritual master tells okay, you got married to this person. Now, is it because you are taking initiation that is a binding instruction? Not necessarily. Not necessarily. It is still we have to look at from our perspective, is this compatible, is this going to work on because after all, we have to live with that mess. We have to live with that career. So there are at this point, the spiritual master is not a material master. The spiritual master tells you, don't give your child mainstream education. Put him in the Gurukul. That's up to us to decide whether we want to do that or we don't want to do that. This is not disobedience. So see, it's like somehow, although we refute Mayavad philosophically, we say the Guru is not Krishna, but psychologically, we sometimes accept Mayavad. When we say basically, the Guru is omniscient. The Guru's words are the perfect authority in all walks of life. Not necessarily. The spiritual master, now what is because spiritual master? Other spiritual guides, they can give suggestions, but they should not make those suggestions seem like instructions. I think we as a movement, as we are also evolving, we are also recognizing how these things should move forward. So, that's the 3 points I mentioned. The relationship itself doesn't have to be vertical; it can be horizontal. The spiritual master, yes, Krishna can speak through the spiritual master, but that does not mean that every single word that is spoken is necessarily coming from Krishna. So we have to see what is Anu. And lastly, talk about from our perspective, we need to understand this is my spiritual master, not my material master. And that means that with respect to major material decisions in my life, like say my career, my children's education, my marriage, the spiritual master, I can take blessings. I can take some guidance, definitely. But we should not have to consider that those are instructions. And what I say, those are instructions, what I mean by that is that if I don't accept this, I am doing Guru Avagya, that I am doing Guru Avapad. No, it's not like that. So I hope this point is clear. Is there any, because it's a very sensitive subject. So are there any questions about this particular point further? Yes, please. Okay. Is this the same point? Yeah. No. Is Madhugopal here? Yeah. Okay. So okay. Yeah. Okay. Now, if he wants to comment something, he can. Yeah, go ahead. I would consider the instruction itself as material. Because see, the material spiritual is like a very, sometimes it's very difficult to differentiate. Prabhupada said the material spiritual broadly it can be understood in two ways. One is in terms of, if you consider objects, it in terms of its content or constitution. So is this material or spiritual? In terms of material constitution or composition, it's made of material something. But when you're using it to speak Krishna Katha, to do Krishna Kirtan, in terms of application, it becomes spiritual. So when I'm using the word that spiritual master is not a material master, the only point I'm making over there is that the expertise of the spiritual master is in spiritual subject matters. So there is, and the spiritual master is not omniscient. Spiritual master does not claim to be omniscient. So therefore, now which instructions of the spiritual master, rather than thinking that this instruction is a material instruction, this is a spiritual instruction, I think that's not a very appropriate way of looking at it. We can look at it more as that this instruction is about an area of my life about which I am responsible. Mhm. So, taking us back to Godhead is our spiritual master. Now, how we live our life journey, like getting the river to the ocean, that is the spiritual master's responsibility. But how the river goes through the various paths along the way, the spiritual master can guide us. But ultimately, it is our responsibility. Isn't it? So that's why we need to see whether we can make it work. So now we can say, oh, if you have faith in your spiritual master, anything is possible. We can always, like you said, quote verses. Mukam karoti vachalam pangam. You can say. So we may try some instruction, it doesn't work. And somebody else may say, oh, you didn't have faith in your spiritual master. That's why it didn't work. Well, maybe not. Well, you can see that Prabhupada himself tried so many things. Some of them succeeded, some of them didn't succeed. Some of them now, his disciples are bringing about success. Some of them may be grand disciples, may bring to success. Things, we cannot reduce things to like a one cause. That because this devotee was surrendered, therefore this devotee was successful. Because this devotee was unsurrendered, therefore they didn't succeed. It's like a single factor analysis. Single factor analysis is, it is in any serious scientific research that's generally not accepted. And you have to consider multiple factors. In Sanskrit, it's called as Eka Mulika Nyaya. Nyaya, which looks at only one factor. The purity is the force. If you are pure, you'll be successful. And for 40 years, Prabhupada was not successful in India. So was Prabhupada not pure at that time? If you look at Prabhupada's writings, they are as convincing, as potent when he was writing in India and when he was writing. So sometimes, even with purity as the force, some things will work out at a particular time. So it's why if somebody starts, so every point that I have made, I can myself make the opposite point and I can give opposite quotes. I can say whatever instruction the spiritual master gives, we should follow that instruction. And I can make a complete case justifying it. So at one level, quoting scripture is, it's like a game or it's like a skill. And one person may be able to quote scripture in a particular way, another person may quote scripture in a different way. And sometimes if you just go based on quotes, who can quote better may win the quote. But spiritual growth doesn't come simply by winning the quote. It comes by having a heart dedicated to service. So I'd say that if somebody else takes the opposite position, I respect that. Yes, you can build that opposite position based on Shastra rules. But based on my observation of especially the last 10, 12 years, often we talk about deepening our Krishna, and that's important. But I feel just as important is to deepen our Krishna consciousness, it's that important to broaden our Krishna. Deepen means we go deep into our personal relationship with Krishna. Broader means we understand that the world is a very big and complicated place. Different people are in different situations. And everybody cannot apply the same thing in the same way. So my travels across the world have broadened my understanding. And yes, and somebody said this is less surrendered. Okay, maybe it is less surrendered, but I would say it's less surrendered and it is more sustainable. Sometimes we may say this is serious spirituality, but serious spirituality, is it sustainable lifelong? We can do something very seriously for 1 year, 2 years, and after that we get burned out. And when somebody gets burned out, then they say you are not sincere. It doesn't work out like that. So, what is sustainable? Now we can use the excuse that this is not sustainable and never become serious. That is also different. So that's why ultimately each one of us has to see: Am I eager to serve Krishna? Am I eager to serve Krishna? And we have to find that what is the way we can seriously practice bhakti in a way that is sustainable. Okay? Thank you very much. श्रील प्रभुपाद की गौर भक्त वृंद की पिताई गौर प्रेमानंदे